Welcome to Green Money Matters, the podcast where your financial future meets the planet's well-being, bringing you the latest on climate issues and uncovering new and exciting investment opportunities that make a positive impact.
And I'm Chris Everett, your guide to sustainable investing, ESG funds, and all things green. Each week, we'll explore the intersection of money and sustainability, showing you how investing wisely can create a greener world and grow your money.
So get ready to invest with a conscience and join the growing movement of individuals who are reshaping the financial landscape. Welcome to Green Money Matters.
This is Green Money Matters podcast, and I'm here today with Andrew Bahar, CEO of As You Sow and author of the Shareholder Action Guide. But Andrew, perhaps you'd be kind enough to introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about what you do and what As You Sow does.
Sure. Well, thank you for inviting me, Chris. Happy to be here. So As You Sow is a 501c3. It's a nonprofit organization that was founded in 1992 to focus on corporate accountability. So basically what we do is, first off, we start with a lot of research. We set up these what are called key performance indicators on a range of different issues. It might be racial justice, might be ocean plastics or pesticides in the food system or climate change. And we evaluate many, many companies. So in the case of racial justice, 3,000 companies on 61 key performance indicators. And what this does is a scorecard emerges. You can see which companies are leaders, which companies are laggards. And then we sit down with the laggards. We call them up, we send them a letter, say, hi, we represent shareholders. And basically, most of the companies are very happy to hear, to see the data and to have that shared with them. Because as shareholders, we want them to succeed. We want them to outperform. And so last year, we engaged 210 companies. And of those, 99 said, thank you for the data. Let's go become better companies. Let's, treat our employees better. Let's look at our supply chain. Let's all the different sort of really the detailed stuff that companies do to outperform. And so 99 did that, but some are a little more resistant. And so we filed what are called shareholder resolutions. We filed 111 shareholder resolutions. And what these are is very formal documents where a shareholder asks all the other shareholders to have a conversation about an issue and then take it to a vote. So once we did that, 51 of those companies said, we've reconsidered. We think that what you're saying is really good. Let's go get it done. So about 70% of the companies we initially reached out to agreed to take some action. The others went to a vote at the annual meeting. And these are non-binding votes. So after the vote, we sit down with the companies again and we go, look, 30% of the shareholders think this is important, 40%. Or sometimes in some cases it's 6%. But even at 6%, we've had companies say, you know what, this is actually really good for the company. We're going to take action. So the votes are not as important. It's really the relationship with the companies. And these are over many, many years. And we have a staff that are very expert in these different issues. And so essentially what we're doing is helping companies to improve themselves.
How easy is it to get a shareholder resolution passed? How easy is it to have that brought up at a shareholder meeting?
Again, I advise you not to use the word pass and fail. A lot of journalists, they say the resolution passed, the resolution failed. It's not like that. It's not like sports. It's not like a political election. These are non-binding. Even if you get a 90% vote, the company does not have to take action. But a board of directors, when 90% of the shareholders think something's important that don't take action, chances are next year, it's going to be a lot of people voting against that board of directors because they didn't do proper oversight. So it's not a pass-fail kind of a system. And like I said, some of our biggest, what we consider to be really transformative moments with companies came with a 6% vote. So in terms of filing, the difficulty, it's really anyone who owns $2,000 worth of shares for 3 years, $15,000 for 2 years, or $25,000 for 1 year, and is a bona fide shareholder, can file a resolution. They're 500 words, and you got to be very careful because like a word with a dash and a hyphenated word counts as 2 words. So, generally when we write them, the word count is more like 460 because, numbers, if you put in a date, 2024 is 2024. It's 5 words. So you have to be a little careful. But basically, the difficulty is crafting them in a way that is optimal because the company can say, we're not going to put this on our proxy statement to be voted on if it deals with what's called ordinary business, micromanagement, or has basically, if they've already done it, if you're asking for a report, we need a report on water, and the company already has done one. So that's called, I forget the exact term, but basically there's some limitations to what a shareholder can ask. Now, shareholders have standing to ask about material information. So generally, these resolutions are about disclosure. We're generally asking for a report on risks that the company may be facing. And so that's really kind of, I'd say the majority of the resolutions are around, requesting a report on risks. And again, companies are required to disclose material risks to their shareholders. And materiality is a very important concept. What materiality means is, from the eyes of a shareholder, the information they need to make a buy or a sell decision. And so if, for instance, a shareholder wants to know about, like carbon emissions, the company is required to disclose that. And there's a great deal of conversation around this right now. And you probably know that next week, the SEC is supposed to come out with their climate disclosure rule that they've been working on for many, many years. That's very controversial because, all the shareholders say, of course we need to know this. This is critically important for us to know about the company. And then there's folks on the other side that are saying, if a company were to honestly disclose, it would be, they're just the end of the world, the end of capitalism. You get very loud and noisy people on that side.
Yeah. I guess how you phrase these questions, you've got to be extremely politic, in terms of judging what can be achieved, how it can be achieved, how it's going to be received. It's quite an art form, I assume.
I would say there's some art to it. We're pretty good at it. We've been doing it for 30 years, and, we filed, 100 last year. I think we're up to about 80 this year. And we know our way around it. We assume that many of them will get a no action letter, so we're prepared to defend it. Certain companies they file a no action letter on everything. And other companies, they're much more nuanced. They really look at it and go, you're asking for something that is not, a proper purpose. Everyone that we ask for, we believe is absolutely defensible, and we do defend them.
So I appreciate what you're saying. It's none of this is black and white. It's not about, winning or losing. But how do you judge your success rate?
Only on one metric. Does the company actually change their policies and practices to become a better company? I mean, that's it. Again, we've had 90% votes where the companies just adamantly said, we're not doing that. And we've had to then escalate and actually replace some of the board. And, in other cases, we've escalated where we filed what are called derivative shareholder actions, where we represent the company and we sue our board for breach of fiduciary duty. So, one can escalate beyond we prefer, the ideal world for us would be if every company we approach said, wow, what a great idea, let's go do it. That would take the least amount of resources from us. That would be, I think, improve the companies, make them more competitive. And we're looking at how do you improve a company across all stakeholders? So we're looking at how do you make a better company for employees, because retention of employees is critically important. That's the most expensive thing companies have, is when employees leave and you have to replace them. So we want to reduce that cost of goods. Replacing employees is very, very expensive. So retaining employees, that means creating a culture that people want to work there. Also, productivity. We've seen studies where people who believe in their company, their productivity just goes through the roof. And people who just really think their company is just, is changing the world, they're working, just their productivity just so high. So we want to help the companies to create a culture that will have really happy employees who are well cared for, who have proper health care and benefits and time off and good leave and just love their company. And then the communities where they operate. It's really important that the companies, if they're dumping in the local river, if they have a factory, that's going to cause ill will. That's going to cause lawsuits. That's going to harm the brand. That's going to be negative. So we want the companies to put water treatment systems in, or whatever it is that is going to help it to really take care of the local community. And these days, the community where you operate really tends to be the whole world, because if you're emitting massive amounts of carbon that's leading to climate change, that's having an impact on a bigger community. Supply chain. We look closely at supply chain. You don't want to have slavery in your supply chain. Again, that's going to come back to bite you. People are going to find out about it, and then no one's going to want to buy your product. Your brand will be tainted. Not good for shareholders. Not good for the whole company.
No. We live in an interconnected world, of course, and proper risk assessments across social impact, governance impact, environmental impact has a great deal to say to shareholders' value amongst many other things.
So this phrase that there's this whole anti-ESG crusade, ESG standing for environmental, social, and governance, that doesn't actually understand what it is. ESG is the shorthand for a framework for assessing risk. That's it. Assessing environmental risk. If there's a flood floods in Pakistan and droughts in Texas, and there's no cotton coming out of either, and you make shirts, you should know that. That's important to assess that risk. If your employees are unhappy, you should know that to assess your risk. So management teams who are assessing and addressing risk are more likely to be profitable. And so investors want to know that. They want to invest in management teams are competent and can assess and address risk. And that's all this is about. This is like basic business. It's a business 101.
Exactly. Yeah. But Andrew, tell me, what got you into the business, if you like, of socially responsible investing and shareholder action? What triggered this for you?
Well, for me personally, prior to this, I was doing startups. I was basically raising money, licensing patents. I ran a medical device company, and I ran a small company that did innovative fuel cells. And so I'd written a lot of business plans, and a person that I knew from, well, way back, like in college years, had founded As You Sow back in 1992. And he asked me to write a strategic plan. They had been operating for 18 years, just operating without a plan. And so he asked me to write a plan, and then the board read the plan, liked it, and asked me to stay on as CEO. That was in 2010. I mean, I'd always been an environmentalist. I'd always been working on a very personal level. For instance, I lived in a small town in Southern California, and this very large company, the largest waste management company in the nation, was going to put a toxic waste dump right at the mouth of the valley on top of a very low-income community. And my wife and I actually organized the town with some friends, and over the course of 5 years, got the company to withdraw. And part of that was, developing recycling systems for the county, because we didn't actually need the landfill. And that's really what turned the tide. And I realized just the power of corporations, and I realized the power of people to actually change the policies and practices of these corporations. And so when I met As You Sow and I saw that was the whole theory of change, it really resonated with me. And, that's why I became very interested in it.
Amazing. Now, can you share some recent success stories or impactful campaigns that As You Sow has recently been involved in?
Sure. Here's one. We were working on antibiotics in factory farming. And the reason that they feed antibiotics to the animals is because they're confined in very small spaces, and so they're exposed to their own feces and manure. And so they just put antibiotics in the feed, which means we're getting antibiotics into all of our food. And so we started with poultry, and we saw that there were, first off, if you are eating antibiotics every single day, then it gives rise to the evolution of the bacteria to become what are called superbugs, so bacteria resistant. And so parents were getting very concerned about this. So we took that concept that parents were concerned to McDonald's, and we said, look, our chicken McNuggets are full of antibiotics, and we're going to start losing market share. So we're concerned. It's a material risk to shareholders. They took it really seriously, and over about a year or so, studied the issue, realized that they could source their poultry antibiotic-free. It would become a benefit for them. It become a competitive advantage. So they announced, we're going to go antibiotic-free. So we took that to Kentucky Fried Chicken, and they said, well, we'll do it too. We took that to Wendy's to Burger King. They said, we'll do it too. And then we took all of that upstream to Tyson, Sanderson Farms, and Purdue, and said, look, all of your major customers want antibiotic-free poultry. So you're going to need to start to produce it or you're going to go out of business. And so they then saw the logic of the supply chain. And so it was really the market forces. Consumers, the end people wanted something cleaner. We took that to the companies, so this was going to be an advantage. We took that to their suppliers and said, you're going to need to supply it. And so essentially, it took us a couple of years and a few shareholder resolutions, but really transformative to the poultry industry. So that's one example. Another would be, I've been working with Starbucks for a lot of years about their cups, and they had a lot of styrofoam cups. And we worked with Starbucks a lot. We got them to stop using bovine growth hormone in their milk. We got them to recycle. They were never recycling containers in Starbucks till we said this would be a really good idea. And they realized it. But they're also their use of plastics. So, we got them to stop using the green plastic straws. But this story is kind of intriguing. So we got them to agree that their cups could be made out of recycled cardboard. And we put these recycling containers in the stores. And it wasn't us, but somebody else put a tracker on a cup and threw it into recycling. And it turned up in landfill. And it became this headline news that Starbucks says they're doing all this stuff, but they're not. And now we had been talking to Starbucks about eliminating styrofoam across their whole global, 12,000 stores all over the world. And they were kind of resistant to it. And so they came to us and said, it's a really bad story. We said, what can we do? We said, well, you can eliminate styrofoam, which we've been working on because of the impact of styrofoam on ocean ecosystems. It ends up in the ocean, it breaks down, marine life eats it. It's just terrible stuff. So they agreed to no styrofoam. We took that to Dunkin' Donuts. They agreed. We took that to McDonald's. All in all, about 3 billion styrofoam cups are not being produced this year or for many years now. And which, of course, reduces demand for natural gas and oil, which are the feedstocks that you use to make styrofoam. So again, you can see how this evolves from brand perception coming through the lens of shareholders going to the company and going, hey, this is an opportunity for us. And then the company going, yeah, this is an opportunity. And we don't really need the styrofoam anyway because we can use recycled cardboard. And that's what our customers want. So it's really a win-win win-win-win because it's the customers, the shareholders, and the company. And that's what we try to find those and construct those.
That's so nice, both those stories. And the way you're able to show the producers or demonstrate to the companies themselves how it's actually in their interest, just holding the mirror up to the end effects. Yeah, I love that.
Well, we're in this major shift right now, which started kind of in around, like in 2015, 16. This really started happening where the companies started realizing that the whole idea, the Milton Friedman concept of dump in the commons, have slavery in your supply chain, abuse your employees just to make as much money as possible, wasn't working out well. Maybe in the short term, but not in the long term. And so the companies started to really question their philosophy. And in 2009, the Business Roundtable, major companies, got together and came out with a new purpose of a corporation, where they said we're no longer shareholder primacy. We are stakeholders, about stakeholders. So stakeholder capitalism, take care of your employees, your supply chain, your community where you operate, and your shareholders will benefit. And so this became the new philosophy. And we're right now in the implementation phases. And that new philosophy, it's essentially about this transformation from a extractive economy, where you're extracting labor, where you're extracting from the earth, to a regenerative model, where you are taking care of your employees, where regenerative farming, the land gets richer every year when you harvest so that you can plant again without any outside inputs. I mean, it's amazing how productive on an acre by acre basis. Regenerative agriculture is, regenerative fishing. There's more fish after you harvest. But this whole idea of a regenerative economy, so it's holistic, and it's really about justice and sustainability. And that's the shift. We're going from extraction to regenerative. And think about it from an energy system, going from extracting coal and oil to the abundance of wind and sun. So this is a giant philosophical and market shift that's already happened. It has happened. And the folks who are trying to stop it are just way too late. These The oil companies that are trying to block this change. I mean, these are the Blockbusters and the Kodaks of, a few years ago. I mean, as shareholders, we go to these oil companies and go, look, the internal combustion engine is going to be obsolete in a few years. And we're still we're assuming that it's not going to happen. We got to turn the ship. We want to become energy companies and not oil companies. Just like we went and we talked to Blockbuster and said, this internet thing is probably real. Look at Netflix. And they were like, no, and Kodak, really we should think about digital photography. And they're like, no, we do film. It's the same thing. And so people who are invested in oil companies right now are looking at it and going, yeah, these guys are going to become obsolete really soon. And so that's why we keep filing shareholder resolutions saying, what's the transition plan? What's the long-term plan here? Is anybody thinking out, of where we're going to be in 10 years? And they're just not. They don't. And so that's the hard part, is when companies don't listen to them.
So it's an interesting sort of juxtaposition. Farmers, agriculture, they work on an annual basis, or at least, a full season of growth and so on. Companies are working towards quarterly targets. That seems...
Wait, are they? That's a myth.
Is it?
Here's the myth. I sit down with CEOs of these companies all the time, and that's what they say. Well, we can't make the change because we've got to make our quarterly numbers. I go, I'm looking at your stock register. I have it literally up on my screen right now. I'm looking at every shareholder in your company. They all look like long-term holders. They're pension funds that hold forever. They're asset managers, that have target date funds and big funds that hold forever, because it's mostly in retirement plans. I see big banks. I see maybe 10 or 15% of folks who are short-term, that are day trading. Why are you making all of your strategic decisions based on 10 to 15% of your shareholders? If you went to your shareholders and said, here's our long-term vision, we're not even going to do quarterly reports anymore. You know what? You might lose 15%, but you know what? You'd have a much better company and a much stronger company, and those shares would be picked up in a heartbeat. So this is a myth. This is leftover Milton Friedmanism.
Only sort of beholden on a quarterly reporting basis to maybe 10 or 15% of its shareholders. Now, I wondered how those companies' boards responded when you suggested that to them.
They seem stuck in another world, in an older paradigm. And I think that they're starting to realize that the most successful companies, the companies that will succeed, are the ones who are transforming into a regenerative, longer time horizon mode. I think that shareholders want that. Also, what shareholders really want is honest disclosure. So when a company discloses their information, it's accurate, it's verified by a third party, and in a standardized format for comparability. And what I tell the companies all the time is, it's like, well, we don't want to disclose because we're not really doing great right now, unlike, say, diversity or emissions. I say, if you state it honestly, and you also explain your trajectory, where you're heading, and how you're going to get there, shareholders, that is an honest relationship that shareholders will respect. Now, let's say you get 80% to where you're going. Well, you explain that you need to make a course correction. Again, people will go on the ride with you if they believe you're being honest. It's when you are putting out misleading information and then you're scrambling back and forth. That's where people lose faith in you. This is about relationships. This is long-term relationships. And the companies and the management teams that realize that are the ones who succeed, are the ones who people want to invest in. It's really that simple. Trust is probably the most important commodity that we have. And when regulation is the only way that companies are going to disclose honestly, here's the thing. There's already a lot of companies that are disclosing their emissions honestly right now. And there's a lot of companies that are not. And so, this whole idea of the SEC climate disclosure rule, that's what's important, is to get it to be standardized. It's the basic role of the SEC. But investors know who the good management teams are, and that's where they're going to put their money.
Yeah, I do agree. Now, your initiatives cover everything from clean technology to traditional agriculture, antibiotics you mentioned, and factory farms, nano hydraulic fracturing. Now, I'm on board for all of those, but how do you divide your resources? Are you able to prioritize? And if so, how do you do that?
So we're divided into 6 program areas. There's the climate and energy team. And so they're looking from the wellhead all the way through. So that would be fracking, that would be drilling, then pipelines, and that would be fugitive methane, and all the way up to the petrochemical plant. And then we have a group that's expert on that area of creating the plastic feedstocks. And then, of course, we have a group on single-use plastic because it all ends up in the ocean. So from wellhead to ocean, or along the way, some of that petrochemical is burned and becomes carbon. So we're tracking all of that. And then we're looking at the banks and the insurance companies who fund and underwrite all of this activity. We're also starting to look at the impacted communities that are fence lines, so environmental justice issues. And we've been working with these communities to try to elevate their story and the fact that the companies are not listening to the dumping in the commons, particularly in the local communities. So there's that whole zone. We've got a zone on environmental health that's working on essentially toxins in the food system. So pesticides, particularly glyphosate. Glyphosate is a very insidious chemical that's sprayed on wheat, oats, and beans right before they harvest it to desiccate the crops. And so it gets right into our food system. They don't allow this in Europe, of course, because they have the precautionary principle. You can't put poison on food unless you can prove it's safe. In the US, you can put anything on anything. And if somebody dies, maybe you could find causation. Let's not get there. But, the EU is just so much more advanced than the United States. It's just unbelievable that we can't observe that and go, yeah, that works. So glyphosate, as well as antibiotics, and then forever chemicals like PFAS. So that's that whole group. And we also do some litigation in that area under a California statute called Proposition 65, where we file 60-day notices with companies that have carcinogens and reproductive toxicants in their consumer products. We've been doing that. We were actually founded to do that. That was what we were doing in 1992. We recently tested and are working with the entire global chocolate manufacturing community. We actually figured out why there's lead and cadmium in chocolate, and we are now implementing changes on the factory floors. It's pretty exciting. It's taken us years to get there, but we're literally designing new kinds of machinery that will hopefully reduce 50% of the lead out of chocolate. We all love chocolate. Then there's the group working on circular economy. So they're looking at recycling electronic waste, the right to repair. They're also focused on recyclability, and they also work on that whole plastics area. Then the social justice group works on racial justice, diversity, equity, inclusion, and excessive compensation for executives. So that's kind of a team there. And the other thing we do is we analyze how people invest. So every month in the Invest Your Values platform, which is at investyourvalues.org, we analyze 6,000 mutual funds because we're all invested in our retirement plans and nobody has a clue what they own. It's remarkable to me. 100 million people in the US have $10 trillion and no one has a clue. And we are all invested in the extractive economy. So we analyze these 6,000 mutual funds and then we aggregate them up for the retirement plans. Just to shine a bright light on that, pension plans are the same thing. Everyone is owning deforestation and oil and private prisons and weapons, and no one is aware of it. You ask an average person, what are you doing for your retirement? Oh, I'm in a pension fund. What does the pension fund own? We don't know. We were told not to worry our pretty little heads about it. Oh, and how does the pension fund vote on proxies? Well, we don't know. Well, the truth is you own the whole thing and you are voting with management 98% of the time. That's the truth. So we have a whole, piece of work that we need to do to educate people about their own power. Imagine if everyone who earned the money decided how it was going to be invested, aligned with their values, and they could express those values to the companies that they were invested in. It would change the entire thing. It would actually be capitalism. Right now, what we have is what I call captured capitalism. We think it's capitalism, but actually all the power has been captured. And like I say, 98% of the votes go with management. And you look at these big companies like Vanguard and BlackRock and State Street, they're all supporting the status quo. And when we poll the people who actually earn the money, they actually want to invest in the regenerative and just future. So how do you capitalize the future when you're making money from the past? And that's why we feel this tension, because literally all of us are literally profiting from our own destruction. I mean, literally we're making money. And chances are there's not going to be a livable planet to retire onto with this money that we're making. So, like I say, it's captured capitalism. We want to try real capitalism because it's never been tested. We don't know what will happen, but we believe it's going to be better than what we've got right now.
I really like the Invest Your Values tool on the website. I think that's a great thing, and I heartily encourage anyone that's listening to go in and have a look at that and see what your money's doing and where it's going.
You will be shocked, but when you're shocked, don't be, because you're just one of 100 million people who have the same thing. Everyone's got the same thing. I mean, if Google had divested their fossil fuels 10 years ago, there'd be an extra $1 billion in their 401k plan that would have been distributed to all their employees, that they're underperforming. And that we believe this is a breach of their fiduciary duty.
About this $1 billion shortfall in the Google 401k.
If you look in the UK, there's a group called Make My Money Matters that are saying, why, pensioners, why are you allowing your money to be invested in this way that is going to lead to you not being able to retire? It makes no sense. And you're underperforming. What's going on here? How has the system been captured?
What are the worst barriers that you find to getting corporate change to actually be implemented?
I think a lot of it's inertia and some fear. When we go in and we meet with people in the corporations, we often find their CSR, their corporate social responsibility people, they meet us at the door and they actually have an internal agenda. They want to make the company better. I mean, these are professional social responsibility people, but they have no power. Us knocking on the door and coming in, it gives them a little bit more power to make change, because the executives say, go deal with those pesky shareholders. And they come back and go, oh, you know what? The shareholders want us to make a better company. And here's the math. Here's the economic model. Here's the business plan. And then the board goes, oh, wow, we could make more money. Let's go do it. So we help them. Now, they could have brought that same model themselves, but they don't have the power internally. So there's just inertia and fear, I think, inside of a lot of companies. And now there's outside attacks. So the Leonard Leo crusade and litigation. They're suing a lot of companies that have diversity policies. Now, why do you have a diversity policy? Well, we know because we did the study looking at 6,000 of these EEO-1 reports, looking at 1.3 million data points, 1,600 companies across 5 years, that greater diversity leads to outperformance on 8 key financial metrics. It's there. It's undeniable. It is just simply statistically significant. And we show this to the companies and they go, yeah. And then you got somebody suing them for doing their job. And then they get all afraid. So I think the companies just need to have a little more backbone and go, no, we're doing this for fiduciary reasons. And if you want to sue us, but there's no grounds. And, people are just a little bit timid right now. Again, the decision, the philosophical change happened in 2019. So we're only in year 4 or 5 of the implementation. People are still a little unsure about it. There's some companies are absolutely running with it, and they're the ones that will succeed. Some are saying we're not doing it, and they're the ones who will wind down. And then there's all the folks in the middle of the pack going, okay. But I think it's sorting itself out. But I think, so it's sort of a mix. But ultimately, the companies are going to make the right business decisions. And when they make the right business decisions, they will end up over there in the side of justice and sustainability.
Very good. Yeah, understood. Yeah, I trust you on that one. Perhaps in terms of an 80-20 rule, something entirely different, but and it's a little bit crude. But what do you consider would have the greatest impact on reversing climate change and preserving as much biodiversity as possible?
Honestly, if every person took their responsibility for their money and said, I'm going to invest it according to my values, and I'm going to vote my proxies according to my values, what you'd see is a major shift in every corporate board would shift. And then every company would have a climate transition plan, and they would stop giving political money to people who subsidize oil and gas. And I think you'd see a massive shift very, very rapidly. It's really just about, we have the power, we just have not taken exerted our own power. And so, I mean, I honestly think we're not far away from that. People are at a breaking point where they're going to say, you know what, I am complicit, I want my power, and they're going to take it back. I mean, look, if all the Googlers said, you know what, we don't want to invest in oil and gas, we want to make more money, and they changed their whole plan, and we want to vote our proxies, you've got $23 billion there. Move that $10 trillion, move the $27 trillion in pension funds, move the $4 trillion in UK pension funds, and you pretty much have a majority that says we want a different outcome. We actually want to make this change from extraction to regenerative. And I think it happened pretty rapidly. This is why there's all these lawsuits right now happening to take away shareholder power. There's 5 lawsuits right now that could literally take away shareholders' rights. And that is why they're so frightened. That is why the oil companies are just terrified because, well, the people who own them, the beneficial owners of the companies are saying, we actually want to shift. And so we'll see what happens. We're at a very real inflection point right now. And in the next few months, you're going to see what's going to happen. But this whole regressive mindset is part of their plan. Take over the judgeships, and then start to take over the power of all the individuals who actually own the companies, but don't realize it. You know, your title, Green Money Matters. Green money does matter. Green money is the key.
I'm glad you said that, and thank you. Yeah, I'm a big proponent of the belief that the way that we invest and how we invest our pensions and other assets can have a monumental impact on achieving positive climate change, achieving positive effects on biodiversity. But to what extent do we need government to take their role in this?
Government's controlled by corporations. Corporations are controlled by their shareholders. So I go back to my same premise. When the shareholders actually utilize the power that is theirs to control the corporations that they own, the corporations will then, well, they own the government. So I think we'll have much better outcomes.
I mean, I don't necessarily disagree with you, but is it perhaps not a little cynical to say that corporations own the government?
I don't think so. I mean, they buy them. They're sort of bought and sold, aren't they? I mean, that's been my observation.
No, I don't disagree. I don't disagree with you at all.
I mean, I look at who's in power and I look at who they're answering to. I see that they're completely controlled by the oil and gas industry. I mean, in the United States in particular, I mean, look at the decisions that are being made. I don't think it's cynical at all. I think it's kind of pragmatic.
Yeah, and I think, you just follow the money, really, don't you, at the end of the day? Who's funding the governments, who's funding politicians. I think therein lies You're, in one respect, you're an activist. You take direct action through certain established channels. What's your view, though, of those that take a more direct action for climate change, the likes of Just Stop Oil, Extinction Rebellion, Fridays for Future? What's your perspective on that aspect of activism?
We actually don't use the word activist. We say we're shareholder advocates because we're advocating for improving the companies. The folks who are taking a more direct role, we believe that they're expressing their values, and that what they're showing the companies is that the policies at the company level are not effective. I think that what they're doing is important. I think it's raising awareness. It's getting people to say, yeah, it's time to actually realize I'm complicit in this and I need to take action. I think that those actions, if they give people an epiphany and say, okay, I'm going to now take control of my power, my personal power, which is embedded in my investments in my money, then I think they're doing a real service just to awaken people to the fact that they are complicit.
Excellent. Now, are there any emerging trends or developments in sustainable investing or corporate responsibility that you're particularly excited about?
I mean, right now, everything is so under attack that it's kind of a hard question to answer because, for instance, I would say transparency. Let's start there. And honesty, trust. Those are the trends that I like to see. For instance, Texas banned the BlackRock LifePath ESG Target Date Fund. Now, why did they ban it? Well, because it had the word the letters ESG in its name. But that fund has 331 oil companies in it, is the number one fund funding Texas oil companies. So Texas banned the fund that is the most favorable toward Texas oil companies because it had 3 letters in it. And what happened then, so BlackRock lost about $7 billion worth of investment from the red states, but they gained $200 billion in new accounts because people perceived them as being ESG, as having, well, just greater risk assessment, which they don't. So it's very confusing because just nothing makes sense. Like the people putting their money now into an ESG fund that's full of oil, and the people who love oil have banned. It's like it makes my brain hurt sometimes. But that's honestly what is happening here. That's how confusing it is. And so there's just not a lot of just honesty and trust in the system. And there's this group that's just trying to just like break the system. They are filing anti-ESG resolutions. So resolutions that claim to be about racial justice, but what they say is that white men are discriminated against. They're just trying to disrupt a system. Now, what's happened, of course, in Texas and the red states is they're spending billions of dollars in additional interest for their municipal bonds because they've banned all the banks. They banned any bank that believes that climate change is real. So they can't get anyone to bid on their bonds. And so Texas they literally flushed $1 billion extra down the toilet last year just for political theater. And you just go, well, wait, aren't the constituents, the citizens of Texas, they're going to vote these people out of office, but I don't know. They seem to like the theater. And so nothing's making kind of economic sense right now. There's a lot of show and just bravado. And we just try to stay really centered. What we do is about good business. We are not political at all. We are just about helping these companies to become better companies. So we just keep doing a steady hand on the tiller. But I got to say, there's a lot of choppy water and strange, unexpected winds and stuff happening. So, but we do what we do. And so right now, the best thing to do is to really stay calm, stay centered, and just try to, see what the truth is.
Yeah. Are you optimistic? Are you optimistic that all the actions that we're taking across the board are going to have the right effect, that we're going to save our dear old planet, that we're going to keep within the boundaries that we've set for global warming? How positive are you?
I am an eternal optimist because I believe that these market forces have already shifted and that now we're just in this implementation phase. But in terms of biodiversity, and we've had massive biodiversity loss and ecosystem loss. And I don't know that it's all going to be recoverable, but I know that we need to act, and we need to act immediately, and that people are realizing this, and that I believe it's not too late at all. I think that it's just a matter of people saying, okay, I have to act. I'm part of this too. And so, I call upon everybody to use your power. You are so much more powerful than you have any idea. Every time you buy a product, make a decision based on, is the company actually doing something about climate? Is the company doing something about justice? And let them know. Post on social media. Tell the company you didn't buy. We didn't buy your sneakers because you have low scores. Tell the company we did buy your sneakers because you did have good scores. That changes corporate thinking. They need to hear from their customers. Every time you buy anything, you're voting with your dollars. How you invest, how you vote your proxies. There's millions and millions of people who own shares directly that do not vote. They literally throw away their mail-in ballots. We have a system. It's free. Go to asyouvote.org. Click on individual. One click, you can set it and forget it. You will be voting an ESG-aligned ballot on every one of your proxies. And you can customize it. Again, one click, it's free, set it and forget it. You're throwing away your votes by not voting. And a lot of people don't do it because it's just complicated. So use your power. You have so much more power than you have any idea.
Andrew, thank you. Thank you for everything you're doing for all of us. Thank you for the work that As You Sow does. Our listeners will be able to see some of the links that you've mentioned. Invest your values as you vote. These are great ways to utilize your power. But thank you for everything you do on our behalf. to try and make a better world for all of us.
Thank you for having me on the show and look forward to it.
Excellent. That was Andrew Bahar. Brilliant, incisive, and battling hard for all our benefits. Andrew, thank you once again. And that wraps up another episode of Green Money Matters. We hope you're feeling inspired to take your investments to new green heights. Remember, it's not just about the bottom line anymore. By aligning your investments with sustainable values, you have the power to shape a better future for generations to come.
If you enjoyed today's episode, be sure to subscribe to Green Money Matters on your favorite podcast platform and never miss an opportunity to grow your wealth sustainably. Together, let's make money matter for the planet.
And don't forget to leave us a review. We really would love to hear your thoughts or ideas for future episodes. Drop me a line by email at chris@greenmoneymatters.com.
Stay tuned for our next exciting episode, where we'll explore groundbreaking investment opportunities and unveil the secrets of successful sustainable investors. Until then, remember, green money matters. Because investing in our planet's future is the smartest choice you can make. Thanks for joining us.